Mark Smelly Bell here. Which diets have worked for me? Which diets have I tried? Let's review, let's go over it. First things first, the term worked is an interesting term, and it's important sometimes to try to define that when you're trying to figure out how something worked. In some cases, you might want to be really scientific and have a handful of things to actually measure. In this case, I'm just an influencer. And in this case, I'm just sharing some information with you about pretty much just about weight loss, but I don't have hardly any information about like muscle loss. I don't have a lot to share with you from a health perspective, although I have gotten my markers of blood to be a lot better over the years. I have had CAC scans and all those different things. I've had like the heart checked and blood pressure and a lot of things checked. My blood pressure used to be high. My markers of inflammation, my sugar or glucose metabolism and stuff like that used to be kind of messed up. My skin used to be real red. I was fat, I was 330 pounds. And, recently Joe Rogan talked about the sugar diet, and he's like, you've always been built like that, bitch. Which I haven't always been built like that for. Let me tell you about that in two different kind of scenarios here. One is that the sugar diet did indeed help advance my physique quite a bit. And it's led me to this low-fat style of dieting that I'm doing now. Remember, right now, I'm doing basically a low-fat, high-protein, moderate carbohydrate, bodybuilding style diet with intermittently sprinkled in a couple days a week. I'm doing a sugar fast. Today is one of those days. I can't wait to get home and eat a bunch of meat. But I'm actually going out to the Kava bar right now to tie one on, so to speak. But yeah, I haven't always been built like that. I have been built since I was young, though. So it's important to explain that to y'all. At the age of, let's see, 16, I was 240 pounds. So at the young age of 16, I was 240 pounds. Got myself to be pretty big. Then through track and through a bunch of other things that I was doing in high school, I started to lose some weight. I think I got down like 185, 190, something like that. I threw the shot put on the track team, but they also made you like run for track, and that was hard for a little fat kid. Or I wasn't even really that fat. Keep in mind, I started training when I was 12. So yeah, I had some chub on me and all that kind of stuff, but I wasn't like a big fat hot mess. And my boobs weren't that big. But anyway, you get the idea. I was fatter than I needed to be, and I needed to lose weight. And one of the first diets I ever went on was a low carb diet. My brother called me my brother and I talked from him living out in California when I was a little older, not at 16, but when I was probably more like, I forget some of the time ranges, so I apologize for not being super accurate with all this, but I know I did the Dan Duchaine diet and stuff like that at like around 19 years old. I remember getting ready for a powerlifting meet, and I was just like eating like boxes of cereal. I was eating like Cheerios to try to lose weight for the competition, with milk, and I was eating like other stuff too, not really knowing what I was doing. And my brother was like, no, there's a different way of doing things. And that's when I kind of introduced to the first version of the War on Carbs from my brother's mentor, Ron Fedko. Ron actually won an Academy Award for special effects. He studied trigger mechanisms for explosives, along with nuclear energy, and he had a PhD in applied mathematics and physics or some shit like that. I mean, this guy, he was brilliant. But he won an Academy Award for special effects because he figured out how to get the water molecules to move a very particular way, and he was very impactful on the special effects, just special effects in general, period, much less some of the films that he worked on. So we were lucky to have that guy in our corner. He was a power lifter. He bench pressed 225 for 56 reps. I think officially in a competition, I think he benched around 550, 551, I believe, you know, in a competition with a pause. And he didn't like bench shirts, so he didn't wear them. Interestingly enough, he would wear a squat suit, but he didn't like bench shirts. He thought they were like too cheap. I think he just never wanted to learn them either. Back then, the bench shirts cut way into and everything like that. So anyway, I gotta get back to the information here. So yeah, Joe Rogan saying I was built like that is wrong on two different accounts. I wasn't built like that. I haven't been that lean. I've been lean. I haven't been that lean in quite some time. So it helped get me to another level of leanness. And now it's got me on a crazy level because I've also gained some weight. I'm around 220 in the morning instead of 215. And I feel solid and I feel strong and I feel really good. I feel like I gained primarily muscle over the last few months. Not necessarily from the sugar diet, but more so from moving into the bodybuilding style diet. Because remember, the sugar diet had an absence of protein. And that is why I left doing so much of the sugar diet. I didn't leave the sugar diet or abandon it completely. Maybe I will at some point. I don't know. I'm agnostic on this stuff. I'm picking what works. I'm picking what works and trying to stick with it. And then what works, there's that word again. Well, what's the definition? Well, the definition is like what suits me. What feels good? You know, what suit do I put on for diet? You know, how did I become a nutritional ninja? There's only one. There's only one nutritional ninja in the world, and it's me. Ain't nobody else a nutritional ninja out there. Well, maybe there's a couple others. We'll give some people some credit. There's some great people out there talking about nutrition, isn't there? There's some really awesome people. But a ninja knows how to use many different weapons, you know? I'm not just out here using my sword. Can I get a hey now? Hey, I should be. I'm not just out here using a Chinese star, you know? I'm not just out here using certain tricks and tactics. I'm using an arsenal. And that's why I've tried so many different diets. The low carb diet was revolutionary for me in so many ways. My dad's side of the family is Italian, and my dad's side of the family is pretty fat. And well, they're not fat anymore because everyone exercises and everybody's working out. So almost everybody in the family has got it figured out to be able to manage their body weight pretty damn good. My Uncle John, you know, he had to go as far as to like run marathons. He's probably run, I don't know, 200 or 300 marathons in his life. He's probably 65 or something like that. I don't even know. But yeah, he's had to do a lot, and most of us have to move a lot. That's what we found within our family. And I'll talk more about genetics as we move forward, because there's some really interesting things I'll share with you guys down the road about some things I found out recently. You know, different people are going to do different things with cholesterol. Different people are going to do different things with triglycerides. Different people are going to do different things with taking anabolics. Different people are going to do different things with all kinds of stuff. So like, what's the healthiest diet? Again, a lot of it has to do with adherence. What can you adhere to, and what do you like and enjoy? And then probably also lining it up with your genetics. Unfortunately, if you line it up with your genetics, you might not really like the particulars of a diet, you know. But that's where some pharmaceuticals can come in, and I'll make you guys aware of some of that as I move forward with some things that I'm going to do to help lower my ApoB. My ApoB is 65, which is actually pretty dang low. But you know, Peter Attia and some others think it should be under 40, and I want to take some of those recommendations as I get older more seriously. And then in my last blood panel, my HDL cholesterol was pretty low, and I want to work on having that HDL cholesterol up a little bit. And there's all kinds of reasons, and people can make weird and rude comments. I'm just trying to share stuff with you authentically. I'm never professing that what I do is healthy either. You know, probably the healthiest thing I ever promote is walking. It's probably because it's the safest, right? everything else I promote, powerlifting or whatever, or, you know, benching max weight and deadlifting heavy and farmer's carries and all this other shit, like, you know, it's great for you to do. I think it's a great challenge, but I don't ever really consider it health. So I don't want people to pigeonhole me in and think that I'm some sort of, I'm into fitness and I'm into getting better and I'm into having a better body. That does not always coincide with just pure health. So hopefully you guys are picking up what I'm putting down. Hopefully you're downloading my email. I don't even know why people still use email. It seems like the most horrible form of communication, but everyone's always like, oh yeah, I'm gonna need your email address. I'm always like, fuck that. I just text, I just use the phone, I just slide in the DMs, that's it. I don't have a computer or a laptop. I don't use either one. I don't even have one anymore. Threw it in the garbage. Who needs it? Who needs all the burden? I guess, you know, a lot of people have, you know, kind of more regular jobs, and maybe they have to use email. I don't know. I would still try not to use it. I'd still try to figure out a way. I just think it's dumb. But that's because I'm unorganized and I don't understand how to, you know, get it all situated and everything. Anyway, back to the matter at hand. There's two main diets that have worked great for me. And the two main diets that worked great for me were low carb and low fat. And they both worked for me many different times over. Low carb and low fat. Now, there's been a few versions of low carb that have worked for me. A keto style worked pretty good with lowish protein. I say lowish protein and it's like it's a joke. When we're talking about protein and we're talking about, you know, 100 grams of protein being like low for someone that weighs around 200 pounds, it's not really that low. That's not, you know, you're not going to be like emaciated. You're not going to be like missing out on nutrients and shit from having 100 grams of protein in a day. Especially if you're getting fat calories with those 100 grams of protein. If you were having 100 grams of protein and it was all pretty lean protein, and you're doing that kind of forever, which you might kind of do some of that on a sugar diet, you might have to start to find some resources for. You might have to see fat. I'm not on the same bandwagon as Cole Robinson. Cole Robinson thinks that dietary fat is completely useless. I like his concept and I like the idea of like staying away from dietary fat because it's just in just about everything, so therefore you're going to get some anyway. But for vitamin E, D, A, and K, for all the fat soluble vitamins, it's really important to have some fat in your diet. You know, and there's some debates, actually, believe it or not. There's some debates about EPA, DHA. Some people really love those, and some people think those are really important, and other people don't. You know, Dr. Sean Baker is more of like a red meat guy. I've heard some people recently saying that fish oil is the new seed oil, which I would agree with that, because fish oil, like, I don't know, man. Fish oil is so sensitive, and then you're going to try to order it, and then it comes, you know, you ordered it off of Amazon, like it's garbage by the time it gets to you. No matter what brand or how good the brand is, you know, Amazon doesn't give a shit. They're not like putting it in some, you know, they're not like, oh yeah, this is fish oil, so we're going to keep it, you know, at 65 degrees all the time, or whatever it's supposed to be at, 68 degrees or something. They ain't doing that shit. So your fish oil is bullshit. It's rancid. It's probably all gross. However, this is where we mess things up all the time. We talk a lot about vitamin D, and then people talk about taking vitamin D rather than getting vitamin D from the sun. You got to go and get it, and you got to go and do it for yourself. The things you do for yourself are always going to be superior to the things that you do to yourself. Right? That's a Stan Efferding quote, and I always like that a lot. You have to go out of your way. You got to go out of your way. So let me get back to this about carbs and fat. Carbs and fat are primary energy sources. There's no reason to really argue about which one's more preferential or this or that or whatever. Carbohydrates just quite simply are they are faster energy sources. And fats are slower energy sources. And it's nice, we need both of them. And preferred energy source, well, it would just depend on what's going on. You know, like if you were running for like 3 hours, well, then it might be nice to have some fat stores to rely on, because your carbohydrate stores are probably out. Which I always think is funny too, about, you know, calling it stores, like like a carbohydrate store, like it's right next to like JC Penney or something. Anyway, your stores of carbohydrates, you know, like if you're doing something like a marathon and something like that, your glucose, it will, you know, it does have a point where it's like, you know, runs low, right? But then it will get better. It will get better as you continue to go, because then your body will decide to run off of fat for a little while. Your Jesus, car's making all kinds of new noises. This new car. So yeah, I mean, it just depends on what you're doing, how you're doing it, what your heart rate is. You know, if you're walking and you're hiking and you've been doing it for, you know, let's say you're hiking and your heart rate's 100, and then your heart rate drifts to like 110. Your heart rate drifts to like 120. Well, you're probably still in a fat burning zone, meaning that your body is running off of fats, lipids, okay? And then when your heart rate switches over and your heart rate starts to get a little bit higher, and you start ending up, you know, where your heart rate's at like 150 or something like that, depending on your age and stuff. It's supposed to be 180 minus your age to get your heart rate, you know, close to that kind of zone 2 range, give or take some points depending on the person and depending on their fitness level and depending on how much they weigh and all these other things. But the gist of it is 180 minus your age. As you go to do that, as things become more strenuous, you're going to start to burn up more carbohydrate. When you're doing sprints and stuff like that, you're burning carbs. When you're lifting weights, for the most part, you're glycolytic. Those are glycolytic actions. It doesn't necessarily mean, though, see, this is where we get confused. It doesn't mean that you need carbs for that activity. It just means that you need glucose. And your body is always going to have glucose in it. Like, unless you have, like, I don't know, unless you have, you know, low blood sugar or, you know, diabetes or something, your blood sugar can go all out of whack and get sporadic and get nutty. But for the most part, what we've seen in a lot of research is that through a lot of studies over the years, from what I've heard from people, is they have said that someone on a low carb diet will have similar blood glucose levels as someone on a high carb diet. Now, that doesn't mean that all the extra carbohydrates that you're eating are like turning into fat and stuff, because that process, which I believe is called de novo lipogenesis, it doesn't just happen. It doesn't just happen out of nowhere. These things have to be encouraged, and they're usually encouraged by overeating. It could also be encouraged by the combination of like bad habits, bad sleep, potentially, you know, shitty fats, potentially shitty food choices. Like, I think food choices do matter. I think that they make a difference, and it might be a small difference, but the calorie game is an important one. However, what we'll find out, and the reason why people that are thin have heart disease, they are still accumulating, like, it's my kind of theory, they are still accumulating. They're still in almost like an overfed state, but it's overfed of something else. And it's not just their diet, you know, their genetics play into it too. So for that person's particular genetics, they're in an overfed state for like a particular thing. And it could just be like a shitty type of fat. It could just be like a shitty type of carbohydrates. It could be just like low quality food. That's some of my belief, along with that person not getting sunlight and blah, 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 all the other stuff. Getting too much blue light, not getting exposed to infrared, near infrared, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. not getting to a beach and getting in the sand and getting in the ocean. And now, I don't think everyone needs all these things all the time. That would be insane. That'd be ludicrous to think that everyone needs that. But everyone does need light and dark cycles, and everyone does need to have a circadian rhythm that allows them to handle each and every day with less stress, because of what I just said earlier. You're going to get in an accumulation phase, and then you might end up with a glycation going on, or you might end up maybe your HDL goes real low and your LDL goes sky high. Like, all these little things can happen where you're like, I run, I lift, I do A, I do B, I do C. I'm not even talking in my case, because I take anabolic steroids, and so anabolic steroids will lower your HDL cholesterol, which I'll talk about some of this in another video. I'll actually have someone come on who can speak upon it a lot better than me. But I found out some really cool things that are really interesting, that I think could help a lot of you guys out there. So I'll see if I can get Joel Jamieson, my buddy Joel Jamieson, on the horn, and maybe also I'll get do an interview with Dr. Twymans, who is my cardiologist, who also has a lot of great information. He's been a cardiologist for probably like 20 years. He's a beast, and he's up to date on all the modern cool stuff, so he knows what's going on, more so than just your average Joe doctor, right? So the two diets that worked for me, quite simple: low carb, low fat. Within the low carb dieting style, I've also benefited from a ketogenic diet. Okay, a ketogenic diet versus low carb, those are different. A low carbohydrate diet is not necessarily a high fat diet. What has also worked for me, though, instead of just a ketogenic diet, has been a very high protein, low carbohydrate diet. That diet, to me, works great, and is probably my favorite because I have more leniency with the fats. It's not like I'm eating in tremendously low fat, but it's like, hey, mainly keep it under 70 or 80, And sometimes my fats would be at like 100, or they'd be at 90. Kind of depending on the day. I might be at the end of the day, I might have, another 40 grams of fat to go, and I might have something that had, 45 grams of fat or 50 grams of fat or something like that. So I like the leeway with the fat in that diet, because that fits my palate. And maybe your palate has something to do with your genetics too, and maybe it has to do with the foods that are good for us. I don't know. But maybe. Maybe. I like eggs. I like cheese. I like whole eggs. But even when I'm doing some of those diets, I'll still eat egg whites just to protein leverage a little bit. Turn that 30-gram protein omelet, turn it into it being 45 grams of protein and having maybe 10 or 15 less grams of fat. I mean, it's a beautiful thing to do. It's free calories. I mean, keep in mind, in Smelly Bell's world, protein is zero. It's not really zero, but protein, it's as close to, it's negligible calories, in my opinion, protein. And I know it's supposed to get 4, per gram, just like carbohydrates, but I think it's a little different. And I think that the people in the know are in the know, and they understand that, and they know it's at least half. So like protein, like if we changed our foods out to have zero, which again, it might not be completely zero, but I think that would be like an encourager of people eating food that's like high protein. I mean, some of these Oikos or 000 yogurts and stuff like that, those would be 0 calories. Those would be labeled 0 calories. So it'd be an encouragement of like, yo, just eat that like twice a day, because it's 0 calories and somewhat halfway fills you up for at least an hour, or keeps you preoccupied with some food for a bit, right? It'd be kind of neat. And anyway, that's a matter to tackle some other day. I don't know if that'll ever happen. But it's just kind of my thought process, because protein leveraging is so valuable. Remember, all animals, all humans, we're in search of protein. And when we don't get our protein, we tend to really considerably overeat. because the body's like, hey, where's the protein? Where's the protein? You're not getting it. You're eating donuts. You're eating bagel with cream cheese, and then you're having Wetzel pretzel, and you're having ice cream, and you're having all these things, and they're not good sources of protein. Whereas if you had a couple eggs and an avocado or something like that, it kind of stifles you. You're like, boom. You're like, wow, I'm not only full, but I'm full for a long time. And that's where those fats can come in handy, because the fats can help not only with satiation and satiation over time, but it helps with satisfaction. Satisfaction is really critical, especially because you can get satisfaction. I got to use the other hand to snap better. You can get satisfaction just like that. Boom. These days, right? From porn really spit out right there. Porn. From porn. Hey now. From porn to, video games. Just like the dopamine rush is like it's just sitting right there for us all the time. That, instant gratification. And we want stalled gratification. That's what you really want. If you want to be a dog and you want to get down and you want to be gritty and you want to learn how to fight and you want to not really fight. Like, I'm a pussy. I don't know how to really fight. But you know what I mean? Like to not give up on stuff and to be someone that's not going to back down from a good challenge. To be able to get there, you have to, work on that side of your body and that side of your brain, your body, mind, and spirit, to be able to get you through that kind of stuff. So you can take a beating, you can take a licking and keep on ticking. You can keep going. You can keep pushing through. And that's a tough thing to do. But if you learn how to do that, then you're able to do it in all aspects of your life. That's why I love diet. And that's why I became a nutritional ninja. Why do I keep using that? Why do I keep saying that? Because I feel that way. Because I feel that you can throw any scenario at me. You can throw me into any environment. I could go have dinner with Arnold Schwarzenegger, or I could go have dinner with my family, and we go to like hometown buffet or something. And you're which we would never do. That's too white trash even for me, even though I am a piece of trailer park trash. I did come from the trailer park. But even if I ended up at some just shit place, you're still going to see me make a better decision. And if the place is too shitty, I'm just not probably going to end up there. I'm not going to end up at like Little Caesars, which I don't even know you can eat in Little Caesars anymore. But there's certain places I'm not just going to end up in anyway. Like I'm not going there. And if I did go there because it's for like a nephew's birthday party or a niece's birthday party or something like that, then I would just eat before I go. And there's no question. I just would not eat there. I wouldn't eat there. I've done that many times before. And, I don't know, some people get weird about that, but that's part of the ninja-ness. That's part of the black belt of this. You have to learn to not give a F about what other people think. You can't be tied to that. Otherwise, you're going to be tied to being fat forever. It's time to make a big change. And if you're listening to the stuff that I'm communicating about, then you're going to start to understand that you have options in this game. So put simply, the low carb and the low fat style diet have both worked great for me. Something that you can try and something that you can do is occasionally, when you're in a sticky situation, or not even occasionally, but whenever you're in a sticky situation, if the place has a lot of fat, then just get protein. If the place has a lot of carbohydrate type stuff, then just have that. So for example, let's say that you stay at a hotel, okay? You wake up the next day and they got free breakfast, which is always a gimmick because nothing's free. And they have the continental breakfast, and all they have is like fruit. They got fruit, and they got like the waffle maker, and they got cereal, right? Just get the damn fruit. Just eat a bunch of fruit for breakfast. Have an apple, eat 2 bananas, maybe swig down a little orange juice, have a cup of coffee, and call it. That's it. That's perfect. That's a perfect meal right there, okay? Because your other option was a waffle, which is going to have a bunch of weird crap in it, like you don't even know You're gonna put too much other shit on there. You're gonna put syrup and butter and everything. Just don't bother. Don't bother with their eggs. Don't bother with any of it. You don't know, they don't really have real eggs at those places. It's all this like BS stuff, you know. So stick to what you think is going to be the best decision. And even if you did have the eggs, because you're like, yo, I think this is low carb, I'm going to go with the eggs and the little sausage things they have here, or the bacon, then that would be a good choice too. But pick a lane, you know, either go carbs or go fat. Don't pick both. Okay? And I know some people are like, why won't you just count your calories? You can do that. That's another option. That option is always there. You could say, you know what? I feel like eating a waffle, and I feel like eating a donut. And then you eat a waffle, and then you ask your wife, hey, want to split the donut? And hopefully she splits it with you, and hopefully you only ate like, you know, a couple hundred calories. That works. It actually works. But in general, you're always searching for protein. So some of those scenarios, they kind of suck. But this is where you have to go out of your way. You have to go out of your way. You got to go to like a local convenience store. You got to go to a grocery store, and you got to find, it's not an emergency. You don't have to do it right away. But somewhere later in the day, if you're faced with another shitty option and there's like no protein, you got to start thinking about that. And almost everywhere you travel in this country, in the United States, and even outside of the United States, when you're in England and Ireland and Iceland and so many different places I visited, Scotland, did I say Ireland already? France, all these places, they have yogurt-like thingies at their convenience stores. And they are relatively high protein, and they're like modest amounts of fat. There you go. There's some great options. Cheese is usually 1-to-1 fat to protein, so it's similar to eggs. It's not great, but it's not horrible. So you got a lot of options when you really think about it. You know, I tried wine every day diet. I tried Cybergenics years and years ago. Cybergenics was a very, very low fat style diet. Came with a diet book and everything. Some of these things I've done, you know, the wine every day was fun. My wife and I did it. We did it for like 5 days. We actually lost some weight. You guys can look it up. It was a bottle of wine every day, and it was like hard-boiled eggs throughout the day, and then evening time it was, you know, have like a reasonable dinner type thing. And they might have had suggestions with dinner. And it might have been like, you know, vegetables and meat type thing. And it friggin' worked. What was interesting was the hedonic response that you get from having the wine taught me something. It taught me something really special that we don't really realize how beneficial and what a stress relief it is to have something midday that you really enjoy. Like a piece of dark chocolate, or it could be regular chocolate. It could be whatever tiny little thing that you know, whatever you can kind of keep. It's easier to keep these things under wraps during the day than it is to keep these things under wraps in the evening. In the evening, 11 o'clock or whatever, you're gaming or whatever it might be that you're doing, like, this, all bets are off. You're going to make a horrible decision, and you're going to eat way too much. If you ordered a pizza, you're going to eat the whole damn thing, like just things like that. However, midday, if you're going out for lunch, you're like, I'm going to go on a little bit of a walk. I'm going to grab a drink, and not an alcoholic drink. I'm going to grab a drink, a Coke Zero or a Pepsi. By the way, the Pepsi, my daughter discovered this for us. The Pepsi Zero, I think it's called Zero now. It was called Pepsi One for a while. I think they changed it. It's better than the Coke Zero. It is. And Dr. Pepper too. You know, how come we always forget about Dr. Pepper? Dr. Pepper Zero, that's some really golden stuff. That's really good. I'm not a huge fan of soda, and I don't drink soda hardly ever. But I do like I like stuff as a treat, and I like stuff as a hedonic response, as I just said. So sometimes, you know, people think about coffee, you know, having coffee in the morning and everything like that. I would rather have, you know, I've stopped drinking a lot of caffeine, but recently I added a little bit back in, and when I add it in, it feels so much better, like midday. It feels a lot better to have it at 11, 12, or 1. I won't really have it past that. But 11, 12, or 1, it feels like boom. It feels like it hits me and actually does something. Where in the morning, I feel like I'm always taking it almost too early. Like, not too early in the morning, but like, yeah, I don't know. I have a natural way of waking up. It just takes me a few hours, regardless of whether I have coffee or not. Like, I need about, it takes me about 4 hours to feel awesome, you know? It's not like I feel bad. It just takes me about 4, like if you needed me to do something that's rigorous or something that's hard, I need about 3. I could probably cut it down to like 2, but I need a couple hours usually. 2 or 3 hours sounds more reasonable than 4, but yeah, I got to take a couple shits and everything. I mean, it's just, you know, it's a mess, and there's a lot of cleanup going on, and it's just the whole thing. But yeah, I just like to be precise, you know, so that's why it takes me so long. It's not like I'm sitting around writhing in pain or anything like that. As I think about other diets and other things I've done, I do want to mention this. If you're on a low-fat diet, it does not have to mean that you are doing high carb, okay? If you're on a low-fat diet, it doesn't mean that you need high carb. However, you could choose to have higher carbs on certain days, and you can choose to kind of crank your carbs. But I also want you to question your carbs. What are your carbs for? You're going to have 500 grams of carbs and you haven't really done much in the last couple of days. That might be fun, but it also might not be necessary. You know, think about, like, what did you do? What is the activity that you've done? And if you went in the gym and put in a good sweat and stuff, you probably don't need 500 grams of carbohydrates. You probably don't need 400 grams of carbohydrates. And you probably don't even need 300 grams of carbohydrates. You probably need like 200, okay? And need is a strong word too, and we got to define what the hell that means too. Also, if you're on a low carb diet, it does not mean that you have to be on a high fat diet. So if you're low carb, it doesn't mean that you have to have 300 grams of fat a day. In fact, I would say for most people, unless they're trying to go more keto, I'd still keep the fat below. Even for a bigger male, I would say I'd still keep it below like 125, 100, somewhere in there. Now, I'm not saying every day, all the time, forever. I'm saying, like, bro, keep it around 100 or 120, and every once in a while, if it's 150 or whatever, or it's 200, who cares? Not a big deal. You eat a keto brick, you know, are leaning a little bit more keto for the week because you started out with an omelet, and, you know, an omelet, it was a kitchen sink omelet, and it had bacon and ham and sausage and all that kind of stuff in it, then that makes some sense. But being able to be a nutritional ninja, a calorie chameleon, be able to kind of blend in with the environment, and be able to handle any of these situations or scenarios, and be able to handle a bad day. Be able to handle a day that you're kind of quantifying as being bad, and still be able to eat your way through it. Now, look, if the day is actually pretty shit, you got a couple shitty things going on, shit news, got pushed around by your boss, you're kind of sad, kind of mad, kind of this, kind of that, I should have said this, man, I can't work there anymore, you know, you're really getting upset about a bunch of different things, something happened with your lady or your kids, or, you know, you just kind of went through it for the day. You can still make a choice that fits what I just said. You don't have to, like, adhere to the carnivore diet. You don't have to adhere to, well, maybe if you're vegan, maybe you do have to adhere to that, because that's, like, very specific, and people have beliefs and particular reasons on why they're doing that. But for the most part, that's the only diet where you're doing that. And even for someone that's keto, it's like, just break the ketoness for the day. I'm not saying to cheat, though. It doesn't mean that you have to cheat. You don't have to be a punk. You don't have to give up. Don't give up, because you're giving up on yourself. The greatest respect you can ever earn is called self-respect. The way that you earn and gain self-respect, because it has to be earned and gained, is by following through with the things that you say that you're going to do. most people are having trouble with their follow through. A lot of people lose weight, but then they gain it all back because they didn't follow through. They didn't have that momentum kind of follow through. And you have to follow through. And also, if you're going to lose weight, if you're going to go from 500 to 300, why not go down to 250 so that you got some, you know what I mean? You got kind of wiggle room. You might need that wiggle room because you might just be hungry. And you might want to, like, you know, you might want to have a cushion a little bit with it, right? Cushion for the pushing. You might want to have a little leeway with the diet. So you get down to 250 and so what? You get back up to 270. It's like not a big deal. Such a huge improvement from what you did before. Health outcomes are going to be changed forever unless you go all the way back up, right? So that's the way I'm looking at a lot of this. I want to address the carnivore diet. The carnivore diet was only like okay for me. It wasn't great, and I didn't do it for that long. So you guys have seen I did 100 days, right? I did 100 days. I did a carnivore diet for like 2 other months. So I guess all in all, you know, I did it for like 160 days or something like that. Because I would usually do it when Sean Baker would talk about it. Maybe like 3 years in a row, I think I did it for. And one year I just did like a week. Another year I did like a full month. Another year I did the 100 days. And I want to say, like, I don't want to say that diet didn't work for me, but it didn't really move the needle for me. And that's why I moved. And I'm going to probably shoot another video. The next video I shoot is probably going to be on the evolution of how these diets came to be for me. Because if you look back at it, when I wrote The War on Carbs, there's a section in The War on Carbs talking about the PED diet. And the PED diet was not Ted Naiman's thing. This is way before Ted came out with some of his stuff. Because he had protein versus energy diet. And that was like PE diet. But I did PE diet as performance enhancing diet, okay? And when I was doing that, guess what was in there? Carbohydrates. And also, when I did carnivore, I started to eat fruit. And then there was an evolution of Mark Smelly Bell running. There was a bunch of other stuff that was going on. I was kind of moving more from powerlifting to bodybuilding. I was doing more glycolytic stuff. More recently, I talked about sprinting. And as soon as I started thinking about sprinting, I'm like, I gotta really make some changes. It does not, you know, I was trying to have some ketones. I was trying to do all this stuff. And one of my friends was like, man, you're trying all this like magic-y stuff and all these different things. And I don't disagree, or I don't want to argue with what you're trying to do. He goes, but it'd just be way easier just to have carbs. And I was like, he's got a great point. Why not just eat carbs? And that was John Heck. John Heck, not John Hack, John Heck. And John Heck also said, if you're going to be a sprinter and you want to be able to haul ass, he goes, you should make it your job to be a carbohydrate burning machine. And so that's where I'm at now. And I might move into a different diet, but don't be mad at me for making some changes. You know, people are going to be frustrated with me for change. They're going to be frustrated with me for making change. And it's okay. It's okay if you get mad at me for making changes. But what you should understand is I'm going to continue to make changes because I have to do what's best for me. I have to do what's best for me. And I can't pretend to do something just for you guys. I'll never do that. I don't like that. I don't even like the sounds of that. It sounds ridiculous. I am going to continue to change. And if anybody is any sort of scientist, you hear people talking about follow the science, well, then they would be ready to change their information at the drop of a hat when the new science comes out and it says something that opposes what they've thought for many, many years, right? I do not, all the different diets that I've done, as I've gone from one to the next, the only one that I don't really care that much about is the carnivore diet. I still think the carnivore diet can work great for people. It's an awesome intervention. For someone to try the carnivore diet for a month is awesome. It's a great idea. And probably you could say the same thing about like the sugar diet, For someone to try the sugar diet for like a month is cool because you'll learn a lot of things. But you're also going to learn that you want to eat more protein again. And when you try the carnivore diet, you're going to find it might be good for someone to try veganism for a month. Or vegetarianism, like some, vegetarianism with a little chicken or a little, eggs and fish or something, right? It would be a great practice. Because then when you go back, you know what you're going to crave? Like if you did a vegetarian diet, you know what you're going to crave when you go back to regular eating? Meat. Healthy meat. Meat that's good for you. It's awesome. Same thing happened with the sugar diet. The sugar diet, you're not eating a lot of protein. And what do you end up craving? You end up craving protein. You end up craving stuff that's on like a bodybuilding diet. That's unheard of. It's amazing. All right, man. You bastards. I took up all my time. But I'll explain the evolution a little bit more as I continue to give you guys information. But I want you to understand I lost over 100 pounds. I used to weigh 330 pounds. And so I'm not the same Mr. Joe Rogan. I'm not the same as I always been. I used to be 330 pounds. And even though I was a power lifter, and even though I was 330 pounds and I had a lot of muscle mass, I was also very fat and very unhealthy. I was obese. 330 pounds at my height, which maybe at the time I was 6 foot, but I'm probably like 5'11". Or maybe at the time I was 5'11", because that's when I was squatting my heaviest weights. But regardless, 330 pounds at that height is obese. That's obesity. I was obese. There's no other way to put it. Okay, I had a good amount of muscle mass, but I was obese. I probably had 200 and realistically, maybe at the top end, maybe 220 to 230 pounds of muscle. The rest was all fat. I'm being generous, I might not have had, I might not have had that much. You start getting into somebody having more than 210 pounds of muscle, they're an exceptional human. That's when you get into that Nsima Inyang type of physique, where he's got like 215 or 212 pounds of muscle, and he weighs like 250. Unbelievable. He's a freak. He's a machine. Anyway, strength is never weakness. Weakness is never strength. Catch you guys later. Bye.